My name is Lily Harper. I'm 29. My parents left me an old craftsman house in Tacoma, Washington, but my sister Zoe took the penthouse in Manhattan. She sold my car without asking. She didn't even look up from her phone as she threw the crumpled receipt at my chest. My card had been declined at the caterer an hour earlier. Investors were watching while I scrambled for cash to cover the deposit. I stood frozen. Zoe. I pay for that car every month. It's how I get to work. She finally looked at me, eyes cold. It's titled in my name. Your credit was trash, so I did you a favor. Legally, it's mine and I liquidated it. She smirked. Barely enough for the champagne. Next time buy something that actually matters. I swallowed hard and stared at the floor, then at Elijah, her husband, chuckling on the sofa like this was entertainment. This wasn't family anymore. It was control, and it was breaking. It was 3 a.m. The penthouse air conditioning blasted freezing while the city outside stayed humid and restless. My bedroom door slammed open against the wall. Zoe stood in the doorway holding a black garbage bag. She tossed it at the foot of my bed with a heavy thud. Get up. Elijah needs this room for his streaming setup. Your clutter is ruining the vibe. It's 3 a.m. Zoe, I don't care. Pack and leave. Where am I supposed to go? She laughed short and sharp. The old house in Tacoma. It's empty. Perfect for you. She walked out, door left wide. I sat still for 10 seconds. The old me would have chased her. Begged, promised to disappear. Weighed less than 20 pounds. I weighed less than 20 pounds. I passed their room, heard Elijah griping about lighting angles. Past the kitchen lined with empty bottles bought from my money. Out the front door. It clicked shut behind me. The elevator descended forever. At street level, humid air hit like a wall. I flagged a cab to JFK, booked the first flight to Seattle. I was heading to Tacoma. Sitting on that red-eye plane, I kept thinking one thing. If someone had ever been called garbage by their own sister and thrown out at 3 a.m, what would they do next? Me, I chose to fly to Tacoma without looking back. If this story is hitting close to home, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss how it ends. The real part is just starting. I had no idea the old house in Tacoma was waiting for me, with a secret Zoe had never once bothered to look for. The plane landed in Seattle just after dawn, and I caught the first bus south to Tacoma. By mid-morning, I stood on the cracked sidewalk staring at the old craftsman house that had been mine for 10 years but felt like a stranger's. The front porch boards groaned under my weight. The faded green paint flaked in long strips, and ivy had claimed half the railing. I turned the key, the only item Zoe never bothered to claim, and stepped inside. The air hit me thick with dust-aged cedar and the ghost of Mom's lemon cleaner. The living room hadn't changed since the funeral, same floral sofa sagging in the middle, same brass floor lamp with the crooked shades, same family photos lined on the mantel. I set my single garbage bag on the floor and started working. In the kitchen, I scrubbed counters crusted with years of neglect, tossed moldy jars from cabinets, swept mouse droppings into piles. Every surface I touched pulled up memories, Dad flipping pancakes on that stove while he quizzed me on math, Mom ironing shirts at the table and singing along to old radio tunes. They were gone in a single rainy night on I-5 when I was 19 and Zoe 23. The will was straightforward. The Manhattan penthouse went to Zoe because she was already living there with Elijah and needed the space for her career, while the Tacoma house went to me for stability. But Zoe had quietly rerouted the utilities and tax bills into her accounts, paid them from funds I never saw, and convinced me it was simpler for everyone. I moved to the hallway and dusted the framed pictures, me at 8, with missing teeth, Zoe at 12, already posing like she was on a runway. I carried them to the living room mantel and arranged them in a straight line. Upstairs, the bedrooms told the rest of the story. My old room still had star stickers on the ceiling and a twin bed shoved against the wall. Zoe's room had been emptied the week after the funeral. She'd taken the jewelry box, the good lamps, even the quilt Grandma made. I scrubbed the bathroom sink until my hands stung, then went downstairs to Dad's small office. I opened my banking app. Balance $347.12. Rent on my old shared apartment in New York was due in 2 weeks. No job waiting, no car, no buffer. The number glared back like a slap. For a long moment, the house's silence pressed against me, and loneliness settled in my chest like wet concrete. No one to call, no one who would pick up. Then the feeling cracked. I wasn't going to sit here waiting for Zoe to decide what came next. I wasn't going to apologize for existing. I closed the app, stood, and walked to the back door. The yard outside was wild grass, knee-high overgrown rose bushes clawing the fence. But the garage at the end of the drive looked sturdy. I would clear it tomorrow. For now, I needed to sleep. That night, I hauled an old mattress pad down from the attic, dragged it to the living room in front of the cold fireplace, and lay down. The house settled around me with small creaks. Wind found the broken pane in the dining room window and whistled through the rooms like breath. I pulled the thin blanket over my shoulders and stared at the ceiling shadows. This was only a temporary stop, a place to regroup until I found work and rebuilt. But as the wind rose and rattled the loose shutters, a quiet certainty grew. The house hadn't been empty all these years. It had been waiting. I lay there thinking this was just a brief layover, until the first electric bill arrived. A week slipped by in the quiet grind of settling in, and then my phone buzzed late one evening with Zoe's name flashing across the screen. I answered. Lily, transfer the Tacoma electric bill to your name immediately. The statement just arrived, and it's ridiculous, over $400 for a house you say you're barely living in. I'm not covering power for that place. I explained I'd only used a single bulb and my phone charger off a solar bank. She snapped back. The account is still tied to the estate, so it's my headache until you fix it. Do it or they cut service and I'll send you the collection notice. She ended the call. I stood in the dim kitchen staring at the dark window, then walked outside to the meter box mounted on the side wall. The digital readout glowed pale blue. I watched the kilowatt hours tick upward in tiny increments, even though the house had been pitch black for hours. No pause, no fluctuation, just steady, relentless draw. I went back inside, opened the utility portal on my laptop, and pulled up the usage history. The line for the last 30 days was perfectly flat, high, and constant, like a machine running full load around the clock. I sat cross-legged on the floor, laptop balanced on my knees, and stared at the graph. This made no sense. An old appliance might cycle on and off, but nothing explained a flat line this high in an empty house. That night, I lay awake on the mattress pad, eyes fixed on the ceiling, around 2 a.m. A faint, low hum started seeping through the walls from the garage direction. It wasn't the wind or settling timbers, it was mechanical, steady, like a compressor or dehumidifier buried somewhere deep. I sat up, pulse quickening. The sound vibrated faintly through the floorboards, and the house suddenly felt vast and hollow with me, the only living thing inside it. No streetlights reached this far, no neighbors close enough to notice anything unusual. The hum continued unbroken, and a cold prickle spread across my scalp. I slipped out from under the blanket, pulled on socks and a hoodie, and padded down the hall. The noise grew slightly clearer near the kitchen door that opened to the garage. I eased it open. Cooler air washed over me, carrying a faint metallic scent like ozone or oil. I switched on the flashlight from my phone and stepped inside. The beam swept over stacks of cardboard boxes, rusted tools, and leaning sheets of plywood along the back wall. But one panel stood out. The drywall behind the plywood was smoother, cleaner, fresher than the cracked, yellowed surfaces everywhere else. No dust buildup, no cracks from settling, just a recent coat of paint over what looked like a deliberate seam. I moved closer, pressed my palm to the surface. The hum pulsed stronger here, vibrating straight through the material, as if something alive was running on the other side. I stepped back, heart hammering. Why build a hidden wall in a garage nobody visited? And what could possibly need constant power in a place Zoe dismissed as worthless? The questions piled up fast and sharp. She'd never walked through this door since the funeral called the whole property a drag on her portfolio. Yet something here was draining electricity like it was essential. I turned back to the house, retrieved Dad's old crowbar from under the kitchen sink, the heavy one he used for jammed windows and stubborn crates, and returned to the garage. I positioned the flat end against the seam flashlight steady in my other hand. The hum droned on indifferent. I tightened my grip, took one long steady breath, and began forcing the crowbar into the edge, prying the drywall away inch by inch. The crowbar sank into the seam with a satisfying crunch, and the drywall buckled outward in sharp, jagged shards. A powerful blast of frigid, conditioned air slammed into my face, carrying the clean, sharp smell of rubber polish and ozone. The muffled rumble I'd chased for nights erupted into a deep, steady roar, rows of industrial dehumidifiers humming in unison behind the barrier. I jammed the bar deeper, yanked with everything I had, and a whole panel tore free, crashing to the concrete in a shower of dust and plaster fragments. I stepped through the gap into absolute darkness. The space was compact, tightly sealed, and Arctic cold enough to make my breath plume instantly. I raised my phone flashlight and swept the beam across the room. 12 enormous, clear, protective bubbles stood in perfect military rows, each inflated and glowing faintly under strips of green LED lights. Inside them, vintage cars sat pristine, gleaming under vacuum-sealed plastic like time capsules from another era. My legs nearly gave out. I moved forward, heart pounding so hard it echoed in my ears. The first bubble contained the Highland Green, 1968 Ford Mustang GT Fastback. The Bullet Hero car, unmistakable with that iconic, unrepaired rear bumper dent from the San Francisco chase. Right beside it, the 1961 Ferrari 250 GT California Spider in Rosso Corsa, red license plate NERVS, the very one Ferris Bueller joy rode through Chicago everyone believed crushed decades ago. I kept going, the light shaking in my grip. There was the black 1966 Lincoln Futura Batmobile from the Adam West series, the silver 1955 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing from the Lovebug, the white 1969 Dodge Charger General Lee from Dukes of Hazzard, the yellow 1970 Plymouth Superbird from Herbie Rides, again the blue 1959 Cadillac Series 62 from Thelma and Louise, and 6 more lost film icons, each one authenticated by unmistakable production details. My hands trembled violently, sweat slicked my palms despite the cold. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't pull in enough air. These weren't collector pieces pulled from auctions. These were the irreplaceable originals the studios swore were destroyed or scrapped, the holy grail of Hollywood automotive history, worth millions on the open market, maybe tens of millions at auction with provenance. I realized in a blinding rush that my parents had concealed this vault for a full decade, quietly preserving what they knew was the family's true legacy, while Zoe chased status and Elijah chased clout. Zoe had never entered this garage, dismissed the entire property as a worthless drag on her portfolio, never once checked beyond the peeling exterior. She thought she had stripped everything valuable the week after the funeral. She had no clue the real fortune was hidden 10 feet from where she parked her leased SUV. I stood rooted, staring at the silent lineup, chest heaving with a mix of shock, fury, and something close to triumph. I stood there looking at these cars, wondering how long my parents had guarded them to keep the family's real wealth safe. And how many people carried a secret this massive inside their own home without ever suspecting it existed. I almost collapsed when the full scale of what I was seeing hit me. I fumbled the phone from my pocket, hands unsteady snapped. Rapid photos, wide angles, close-ups of VIN plates, through the clear plastic time-stamped details of each fender dent and unique weld. Then I scrolled contacts and dialed. Gabriel Knight answered on the first ring. "Lily, it's almost midnight. What's going on? Get here tomorrow. I found something in the Tacoma garage. Something that changes everything. Bring your evaluation kit and an NDA." Silence stretched a beat. You're not joking. Not even a little. I'll catch the earliest flight. I ended the call, leaned against the Mustang bubble, feeling the cool plastic under my palm, trying to slow my racing pulse. The dehumidifiers droned on, oblivious. Gabriel arrived the next afternoon, stepping carefully through the breached wall, flashlight sweeping the rows. He stopped dead at the Mustang, then moved slowly down the line, checking plates, peering at details through the plastic, his face going pale, then flushed. When he reached the final bubble, he turned to me, voice low and unsteady. "Lily, these aren't just vintage cars. This is a fortune." Gabriel arrived in Tacoma the next morning with a professional evaluation kit slung over his shoulder, and a quiet intensity that told me he understood the stakes. We went directly to the opened vault, no words wasted. He gloved up, powered on his portable inspection lamp, and started methodical verification. He began with VIN plates, reading each one through the clear protective layers, then cross-checked against his encrypted database on a rugged tablet. He examined tire date codes under magnification, inspected factory paint codes with a spectrometer app, and noted unique production stamps on blocks and frames. 90 minutes later, he straightened up, exhaled slowly, and faced me. Conservative private sale value, $15 million. Marketed correctly, with full provenance, the lost Hollywood fleet narrative, and authenticated history, we can easily hit $20 million at auction. He explained these weren't ordinary classics. They were the genuine screen-used originals the studios had documented as destroyed, crushed, or lost post-production to avoid resale scandals or continuity issues. Your parents somehow secured them, quietly stored them here, turning what could have been exposed liabilities into the single most valuable private collection of cinematic vehicles on the planet. He powered down the lamp. "We can't delay. If Zoe moves to sell the property, or defaults on any lien, the vault becomes discoverable. We need ironclad legal cover before she suspects anything. I have the perfect contact." Theodore Rice handles high-net-worth estate disputes and asset transfers in Washington. He's low-profile, experienced with concealed inheritances, and knows how to structure documents that hold up. I'll loop him in immediately. We mapped the extraction plan over coffee at the kitchen table. Gabriel outlined a silent operation enclosed trailer from a bonded transport firm crew arriving after dark. No local contractors, no digital footprint tying back to Tacoma. We disguised the load as generic household storage headed to a neutral warehouse in Oregon, then reroute under NDA to a trusted auction partner in Los Angeles. Speed was critical. Silence was non-negotiable. If Zoe learned of the contents, she could freeze the property with an injunction or accelerate a sale to settle debts, wiping out our window. Gabriel initiated the secure video call. Theodore Rice appeared on screen from his Seattle office tailored jacket, calm, authoritative tone. He listened to the overview, scanned the photos Gabriel uploaded, and leaned forward. "This is intricate but feasible. The strategy hinges on transferring title to all contents, miscellaneous items, and non-fixed assets in the garage without raising flags. I'll prepare a liability release agreement positioning it as cleanup protection against environmental penalties if the house sells." Zoe signs. She believes she's dumping worthless clutter. We extract the vehicles the contract binds. He looked straight into the camera, eyes steady. "If she signs Lily, she will have voluntarily handed you the entire inheritance herself. But will she sign?" Theodore sent the document within the hour, a concise 4-page liability release agreement labeled Contents Transfer and Environmental Waiver. It explicitly covered all clutter, unused items, non-fixed assets, and miscellaneous contents in the Tacoma property, positioning the transfer as a safeguard against potential cleanup fines, disposal fees, or hazardous material penalties if the house sold. The language was deliberately broad, yet airtight. I reviewed it carefully, then forwarded it to Zoe with a brief note. "Zoe, attached is the form to shift the Tacoma utilities and release you from any future house obligations. Digital signature is fine, no cost on your end." She responded in minutes. "This better be quick. I'm in meetings. I called her. Zoe, I need this signed so the power company stops billing the estate. It's simple, she paused. Elijah says we should get our lawyer to look first. I kept my voice steady, but small. I understand, but I'm handling it alone here. If it drags, the disconnection notice goes to you. She huffed. Fine, send the link. I did. She opened it, grumbled about the length, then Elijah's voice cut in on speaker. Lily, don't think you can pull anything over on us. Sign what Zoe needs or we'll drag this out. I let my tone crack just enough. Elijah, I'm not trying anything. I'm exhausted, broke, and just want the bills off Zoe's plate. Please. He laughed coldly. Weak. Put her back on. Zoe returned. I'm signing, but you're responsible for any junk removal costs if buyers complain. I agreed instantly. Absolutely, I'll cover it. Just hit confirm. The signed PDF arrived seconds later, time-stamped, digitally notarized and binding. She hadn't expanded the attachment, hadn't read past the first paragraph, hadn't questioned the sweeping definition of contents. To her, it was worthless debris. I stared at the confirmation pulse thundering. The collection was legally mine now. That night, the transport team arrived at 2:30 a.m. Black enclosed trailer eased up the driveway ramp. No markings, no lights flashing. 6 professionals in unmarked uniforms worked silently, patting each protective bubble, securing them on custom racks, loading 12 units in under 80 minutes, then pulled away into the darkness, headed for the secure Oregon holding facility before rerouting south under full NDA. By sunrise, the vault stood empty, the breached wall hastily boarded with matching plywood, indistinguishable from the rest unless someone looked closely. Zoe called 3 days later, tone brisk. Sold the Tacoma house. Quick cash deal below market, but it wipes the remaining liens. We're done with that place. I didn't push back. The closing recorded for a fraction of true value. 2 weeks later, the auction house notification hit my inbox. Hollywood Lost Fleet Collection enters private pre-sale bidding, opens tomorrow. Initial interest already pushing estimates higher. Zoe would open that email soon. She would see the photos, the provenance, the staggering figures. She would understand exactly what she had transferred without reading the fine print. When Zoe clicked confirm without scrolling through, I thought to myself, this might be the first time she hasn't dominated every detail. I wonder how many people in her shoes would have paused, read carefully. Or would they also dismiss it as nothing more than trash? The auction house notification landed in my inbox on a Tuesday morning with the subject, Hollywood Lost Fleet. Bidding surpasses $23 million. I opened it at the Tacoma kitchen table, fingers numb around my coffee mug. The message displayed live bid standings, provenance affidavits, and high-resolution photos of the lineup already drawing media inquiries from Variety and automotive collectors worldwide. Zoe, as former estate executor, received the identical alert. Within minutes, my phone erupted with back-to-back calls from her number, then a flood of furious texts. Lily, answer me. What is this call now? I let them ring out. Certified process servers delivered the lawsuit 10 days later. Zoe filing in New York Supreme Court, alleging fraud, misrepresentation, breach of fiduciary duty, and intentional concealment, seeking immediate injunction, return of the vehicles or compensatory damages, exceeding $30 million plus punitive awards. She accused me of manipulating the document, exploiting her trust, hiding the true nature of the contents. I forwarded the complaint to Theodore Rice. He called that afternoon voice even. Classic reaction filing. The agreement is unambiguous. She signed voluntarily, no evidence of duress or deceit. The clause, all clutter, unused items, and non-fixed contents, explicitly encompasses the garage in its entirety. We submitted our opposition with the executed PDF email chain showing her urgency to offload liabilities and her own demand for junk removal coverage. The hearing convened swiftly in Manhattan Federal Court, Zoe appearing via video. Elijah at her side, jaw clenched. Theodore presented the defense methodically. The plaintiff executed freely. The language is plain. The term contents transfer includes everything non-structural in the garage. No fraud proven, no undue influence demonstrated. The judge reviewed the exhibits, listened to brief arguments, and ruled from the bench in 20 minutes. Contract enforced. Claims dismissed with prejudice. The vehicles belong to the defendant. Zoe's screen image froze for a second, her face draining of color before the feed cut. The auction finalized at $23.8 million, funds wired to my account after fees. Zoe and Elijah had already liquidated the Manhattan penthouse at a steep discount to satisfy mounting legal fees and immediate cash calls. The IRS launched an estate audit shortly after uncovering unreported asset dispositions from the original will and assessed seven-figure back taxes, penalties, and accrued interest on the undervalued transfers. Credit reports showed scores plummeting below 500, joint accounts, frozen credit cards, canceled collection notices arriving weekly. Public filings revealed the foreclosure action on their last remaining asset, a vacation condo in the Hamptons. The divorce petition surfaced in New York court records 6 weeks later, citing irreconcilable differences amid leaked financial disclosures and finger-pointing statements. Gossip outlets ran front-page stories with headlines like "Influencer Couples Empire Crumbles" and "Lost Fortunes Scandal Rocks Manhattan Elite." Social media amplified the collapse. Old collaborators distanced themselves. Followers dropped by the thousands. Zoe's accounts went dark, then deactivated entirely. Paparazzi caught them loading boxes into a rented van outside a modest one-bedroom apartment complex in Yonkers' plain brick building, cracked sidewalk, no concierge, no skyline view. They faded from the spotlight they once chased. I never picked up their calls, never replied to the final venomous messages, never glanced back at their names on my blocked list. I cut all contact with them, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely free. The funds cleared completely after deductions and taxes, $23.8 million deposited straight into my secured trust account. I retained every dollar, no settlements, no compromises, no lingering obligations. That money embodied a decade of quiet endurance, my parents' careful protection, and Zoe's final reckless signature. With Theodore's counsel, I allocated the proceeds strategically into index funds, real estate trusts, and operating capital, then shifted focus forward. I returned to Manhattan, toured select properties, and repurchased the precise penthouse Zoe had once declared solely hers. The transaction closed smoothly. I walked the familiar marble entry, same panoramic windows, same sweeping city view, now owned outright, debt-free, independent, no family ties, no shared history. I redesigned the interior, deliberately stripping away the ostentatious elements, replacing them with minimalist lines, warm woods, practical layouts, and efficient workspaces, turning a symbol of excess into a functional sanctuary and headquarters. Simultaneously, I founded Harper Logistics, a specialized freight and supply chain company focused on secure, high-value shipments. I assembled a compact expert team drawing from trusted contacts in the industry, individuals who prioritized precision, discretion, and results over showmanship. We launched with niche contracts, relocating vintage automobiles and collectibles, then broadened to fine art, medical instruments, and confidential corporate cargo. Revenue climbed steadily. First year exceeded 7 figures. Second year doubled as word spread among collectors, galleries, and private clients. The operation stayed lean, agile, fully remote capable, emphasizing quality service and client trust over rapid scaling. Zoe and Elijah disappeared entirely from my world. I never responded to their last messages, never unblocked their contacts, never searched their names, never wondered about their circumstances. No outreach, no accidental encounters, no attempts at mending. The connection ended decisively forever. Blood alone does not create family. Family consists of those who refuse to treat you like garbage, who do not sell your possessions, discard your belongings, or abandon you when convenience demands it. Family supports, never diminishes. The Tacoma Craftsman House rescued me. It safeguarded the secret my parents preserved for 10 years, endured neglect and abandonment, and ultimately delivered the means for me to rebuild everything. And Zoe, in her haste and arrogance, she handed me the key herself. Thank you all for taking the time to watch the video. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to like, leave a comment, sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any